The Boneyard, Short Fictions of the Morbid and Macabre, written by Jonathan Dunne, narrated for you by the author. A dumb waiter. The Duggan family moved into the old house on the outskirts of Fox Hollow just as winter was settling in. The property had once been a small state-run orphanage, long abandoned and rumoured to be cursed. But it was all hearsay, and at the end of the day, money talks. The price had been too good to pass up. Mr. and Mrs. Duggan dismissed the stories as small-town superstition. The only child in the family, 8-year-old Patrick, was in heaven, with its long and narrow hallways, slanted floors and strange alcoves in odd places. The house felt like a place made for adventure. The boy spent his days exploring its secrets, bounding up and down the winding staircase which ran through the middle of the house, from the attic down to the basement. Patrick peeked into the attic every so often. The place gave him the creeps. But it was an empty room, and he took that as a place he could put his own stamp on, a blank canvas. He liked to sit up in the room at the top of the house to play his Nintendo Switch. His father wasn't too fond of him playing the console, preferring him to read a good book instead. Now and again was okay, but all day on the console? Which is the main reason why he came up here to play Mario Kart, and kept the living room as his reading area where his parents would adore him. Out of sight, out of mind. But Patrick didn't like to visit the basement. He got a strange feeling every time he approached the door. When he got to the bottom of the steps, the atmosphere would change, and the walls seemed to lean over him, making sure he never opened that door because there was something on the other side he should never see. "It feels like it's watching me," he told his mother one evening, his wide eyes sparkling with wonder. "Who?" "The house. It's watching me. But when I get near the basement." "That's silly, sweetie," Patrick's mother said with a nervous chuckle. But Mrs. Duggan couldn't shake the sense of unease that crept up on her, even dread, that settled over her whenever she passed certain rooms, and the basement happened to be one of those rooms. Isn't it always? The night 8-year-old Patrick Duggan disappeared was bitterly cold, only 3 weeks after moving in. The wind howled against the house, rattling the old windows and whistling through unseen cracks. Mrs. Duggan had tucked her son in as usual, kissed his forehead and left his nightlight on. She read him a chapter from his favourite book. By the time she finished the chapter, Patrick was asleep. At his bedroom door, she glanced over her shoulder to see her sleeping son breathing deeply. She smiled to herself and pulled the door without fully closing it. The 8-year-old didn't like to have his bedroom door closed at night, preferring light seeping from the hallway. Patrick's mother walked down the hallway and descended the stairs without knowing that she would never see Patrick again. But she would hear him. Pandemonium broke out the following morning when Patrick didn't come down for breakfast before school. His mother had called him 3 times, but no sign of Patrick. He was normally downstairs in the kitchen, at the table, having his cornflakes at 8 a.m., but by the time 8:15 rolled around, Mr. Duggan went upstairs to find that his bed was empty. The blankets were piled in a heap, as if he had got out of bed in a hurry. His favourite stuffed rabbit sat on the pillow, its button eyes glinting at him in the faint morning light. The window was securely locked from the inside, but it was the door that raised suspicions. It was closed. Their son would have never closed his bedroom door. They racked their brains trying to understand or find a solution where Patrick would feel compelled to close his door, but the boy had always suffered from night terrors and insisted on having the door open. It did not make sense for the door to be closed, whether he was in the bedroom or not. His parents found this little detail very disconcerting and mentioned it to the police when they came to search the house and the local woods. Mr. and Mrs. Duggan joined in the search. The neighbours, with sombre faces, came to help. Hail, rain and snow, the search went on across Fox Hollow for a full 3 weeks. The search became a national affair, and people came from far and wide to search for little Patrick. But as the search went into the final week of the month, the numbers began to dwindle. By the end of the month, the Duggans were left to their grief alone. They gave up their jobs and set up a GoFundMe account to subsidize their ongoing search and help pay for expenses. They refused to have a funeral for their son, a symbolic gesture if nothing else. His memory was still alive, and that was enough to keep the dream alive. The child had disappeared off the face of the planet and was a viral topic online, trending across several nations. Conspiracy theories were rife and rampant, while the armchair sleuths spouted from the rooftops, yet hidden behind the anonymity of the internet. That was when the hateful whispers started, pointing the finger at Mr. and Mrs. Duggan, who were the logical culprits behind the boy's disappearance, until the other whispers begun. It started as faint laughter, soft as a breath, echoing through the halls. At first, Mrs. Duggan thought she was imagining it while she was sitting pensively at the kitchen table with a hot mug of tea. She turned around and listened out to nothing but silence, and for a second she thought she might be losing her mind. But then came the haunting call, as clear as if Patrick was on the other end of a phone line. She dropped her mug of tea, smashing onto the kitchen floor tiles, spilling tea in all directions.
"Mommy, I'm here."
The distress in the child's voice was unmistakable. "Patrick!"
"Over here."
"Where are you?" Mrs. Duggan screamed at the walls. It sounded as if he was in the fridge. Mrs. Duggan screamed out for her husband. "Bill! Kitchen! Now!"
"It's dark, Mommy. There's something else here too. I hear it shuffling around me, but I can't see it."
Mrs. Duggan let out a litany of swear words as she called for her husband again. She ran down the hallway and outside to find Mr. Duggan speaking on the phone, organising another search party in an area of the woods they had searched 5 times already. "Bill, get in here now!" Mr. Duggan took one look at his wife and hung up, then followed her down the hallway to the kitchen. "Why are you—" She whipped around, and with wide, crazed, teary eyes, she snapped her forefinger to her lips, gesturing him to shut his mouth. "Listen!" Mr. Duggan did as she asked, shut his mouth, and listened out. He followed his wife's line of vision, her eyes flitting about the kitchen in an abstract way. "Vicky, what am I supposed to be—" "Could you please close your mouth for 2 seconds, Bill? Is that too much to ask?" "I'm sorry." It was only now when Mr. Duggan saw the smashed pieces of porcelain on the floor and the spilt tea. "I heard him, Bill. As God is my witness, I heard Patrick." "Heard him? What do you mean you heard him?" "He spoke to me." Mr. Duggan looked about the kitchen. It was on the large side, but nowhere near big enough to hide an 8-year-old boy. "Vicky, maybe we should call that number and see how to deal with this." He pointed to the small card pinned to the notice board. "They might be able to help." Mr. Duggan was referring to the grief counsellor, whom he had contacted, but his wife was quick to shoot that down. "Maybe she can help put everything into perspective." "I'm not grieving. I just spoke to our son. He's in the fridge. I don't need a fucking grief counsellor, Bill." Mr. Duggan's eyes slipped to the business card on the board. Taking a deep breath, he muttered, "Maybe you do." Mrs. Duggan turned to her husband, unable to comprehend what he had just said. "Grieve? How could you suggest such a thing? That's accepting he's dead. He's not dead." She began to cry and slapped her hands to her face. "Oh, Bill, he sounds scared. He said it was dark and there was something else there with him." Her voice broke. Mr. Duggan didn't know what to say. He made to put his arm around her right shoulder, but she slapped him away. "I was talking with him, back and forth." "You're exhausted," Mr. Duggan said, but the doubt in his voice betrayed him. "Don't patronize me, Bill." They parted ways. That night, Mr. Duggan got up from bed to use the bathroom.
"Daddy."
A hollow voice came out of the bathtubs. Mr. Duggan spasmed away from the toilet bowl, sending a hot gush of piss down his pyjamas.
"Daddy, it's dark in here. I'm scared."
"Patrick?"
"Yes, Daddy, it's me. I can't find my way out."
Mr. Duggan panicked and ran out to the bedroom and woke his wife, clutching his arm. "I heard him," he whispered, the whites of his eyes shining in the darkness. "I'm so sorry I doubted you." Mr. Duggan jumped from the bed and bounced back to the ensuite. He leaned over the bathtub and spoke into the taps. "Patrick, tell us how we can help you." But no answer came from the taps, just a constant drip from the coal tap. Mr. Duggan had promised he would repair it, but his life was consumed with finding his 8-year-old boy. By the time the following morning rolled around, the strange occurrence in the bathtub seemed like a strange dream. And Mr. Duggan would have believed it was a nasty dream, only his wife was there to verify his story. They ate breakfast in pensive silence, not because there was nothing to say, quite the opposite, but they were listening for any sign of their child. "We should speak to a builder," said Mrs. Duggan. "And tell him or her what exactly?" "Maybe they can help us find him. We have the blueprints of the house. Maybe—" "Vicky, this cannot get out. What will the country think of us if we tell everyone that our son is somewhere inside the walls of the house? They will have us sectioned to the nearest lunatic asylum. Or worse again, they'll point the finger, accusing us of burying him somewhere on the property. This does not leave the house, promise. This isn't an Edgar Allan Poe story, Vicky." Mrs. Duggan nodded reluctantly. For the next few hours, Mr. and Mrs. Duggan walked about the house on eggshells, listening out for any sign of their boy coming from impossible places. They received several calls from local volunteers asking them when they would be joining the new search, but they had to turn them down, afraid they might miss something if they left the house. To avoid anything being misconstrued and ending up as a viral conspiracy theory online regarding the suspicious Duggans' refusal to look for their son, they told everyone they had contracted a bad case of COVID-19, which would buy them a few days. And Mr. Duggan would have a lot to do during those few days, though he didn't realize it at the time. Wanting to spend his time proactively, Mr. Duggan set about repairing a loose floorboard in the living room. He went to the garage and brought his toolbox to the floorboard in the furthest corner of the living room beneath the coffee table. He shoved furniture out of the way to get to the floorboard. It was a simple case of hammering down the nail which had come loose over the years. The second he rose his hammer to bring it down on the nail head, a moan came from the gap in the floor.
"Help!"
Mr. Duggan flinched and brought the business end of his hammer down on his left thumb. He cried out in pain as blood bloomed beneath the nail. There it was again. Patrick's voice, muffled and weak, coming from the floor this time. Mr. Duggan called back, "Patrick, please tell us how we can help you. How did you get in there?" This time Patrick's voice came from another area of the floor, right by the fireplace.
"Please come and get me out."
Mr. Duggan cried out for his wife. "Vicky, come to the living room, he's back!" as he skipped to the area of the floor where his son's voice had come from and put his ear to the ground. Somewhere, deep down in the foundations of the house, he could hear sobbing. Mrs. Duggan saw the reaction on her husband's face and asked, "Bill, what is it? Did you hear something?" Mr. Duggan didn't want to tell her that he'd heard Patrick crying, if that was their son. There was something off about the weeping. It sounded like the 8-year-old, but at the same time it didn't. Instead, Mr. Duggan grabbed his claw hammer and jammed it under the nail and yanked it out of the ground, then prized a floorboard out from between the others with the aid of a crowbar. Below the floorboards were the crisscrossing foundation joints, and below those, nothing but concrete. Yet the boy was down there somehow.
"I'm over here."
This time Mr. and Mrs. Duggan both swung around to the right. Their son's voice had come from somewhere between the floor and the bottom of the wall by the TV. Mr. Duggan fell to the point from where the child's voice had come from and yanked out more floorboards. Every time they heard Patrick's voice coming from within the walls or under the floor, he would attack the house with whatever tool he happened to have in his hand at that moment. Mrs. Duggan tried to intervene. "Bill, you're going to destroy the place." But Mr. Duggan had lost all reason and tore the house apart, crying for his boy as he helplessly beat the house that had taken Patrick. Plaster crumbled, nails were wrenched free, floorboards splintered, drywall smashed. They searched every hidden corner, every dark crevice. They found nothing. Nothing but the boy's distressed voice, crying out to be saved. But it was beginning to look like trying to find gold at the end of a rainbow. Over the next few days, Patrick's voice was coming from everywhere in the house, in the walls, beneath the floorboards, in the attic. Mr. Duggan had lost his sense of reason, probably because there was no reason for his son's voice to be coming from within the walls. The situation was absurd as it was surreal. Yet the child was calling them, and weeping to be found. It was Patrick's voice, but Mr. Duggan found something odd about the way he was crying, on a sobbing loop, as if it was a recording, playing over and over again. On Wednesday night, Mrs. Duggan was sitting in Patrick's room, clutching his favourite stuffed rabbit, when she heard him again.
"Mommy, I'm right here. Why can't you see me?"
The voice came from the ceiling this time, soft but unmistakable. She screamed for her husband. Together they climbed into the attic, flashlights cutting through the dusty gloom. "Patrick!" she called, her voice breaking.
"Over here,"
the voice replied. Only this time she thought she heard a second whispering voice. And then the haunting voices were gone, as suddenly as they had come. Later, in the middle of the night, Patrick's voice woke Mr. and Mrs. Duggan. Exhausted and at their wits' end, they needed to have a lie down and were lying in bed, fully clothed. They weren't long asleep when the voice woke them. But now it wasn't Patrick, but Patrick's disembodied voice. It giggle-sobbed and begged to be let out. At other times the voice sounded playful, as if he were hiding.
"Why can't you find me, Mommy? Daddy, I'm stuck in the chimney." "That's where I am. It showed me the way. It comes in and out through the chimney. I followed it, but I got stuck."
Mr. Duggan ran for his toolbox, which he kept on standby, then went to the chimney breast with the heaviest hammer he could find, the sledgehammer, and drew one almighty blow dead centre above the mantelpiece. Blow upon blow, Mr. Duggan hammered through the wall until he could look right up that chimney, and that was when he heard the giggle that sent the hairs bristling along his neck. The muffled titter came from further up in the chimney flue. Pale and nauseous, he turned to his wife and told her to go outside with the flashlight and point it up at the chimney stack. Mrs. Duggan was already on it, hurrying for the flashlight in the kitchen below the sink. She trotted outside to a windy night and drew the arc of the powerful flashlight up to the chimney and froze. When she caught something move in her beacon of light, something ducked in behind the large chimney stack, but it wasn't Patrick, and a shiver skittered down her spine. It was too small to be her son. She only managed to catch a flitting glance, and if asked what she thought she saw at that moment, she would have said a monkey of some description, a spider monkey, to be more exact. It was the most logical answer she could come up with, and there was nothing logical about a spider monkey in the southwest of Ireland. Meanwhile, Mr. Duggan had his head in the chimney breast, looking upwards towards a night sky. It was an old house, and the chimney flue went straight up, but at a slight inclination. If he angled himself to the left and peered up, he could just about see the clouds sailing by in the night sky. No sooner had he caught a glimpse of the moonlit clouds when a hideous face got between him and the clouds, looking right down at him in the lead light from his phone. It was a childish face, yet devilish. Visible for a fraction of a second, but Mr. Duggan had seen enough to know that it wasn't his son. They sat on the sofa in the destroyed living room, surrounded by plaster, rubble, and tossed floorboards. It had come to this. When Patrick's voice called out to them in a hair-raising wail,
"They're here with me. There are many of them. I thought it was just one, but there are more here in the dark. Kids just like me, 5, maybe 6. But the 6th isn't one of them. It's something else. They told me where it was, and I got into it."
Mr. Duggan took his wife's hand in his and led her upstairs to Patrick's bedroom, where they curled up on his bed, defeated and out of their minds. And that was when Patrick's mother noticed something on the wall behind the door. A picture, but placed in a very strange place, low down and behind the door of all places. She got up from the bed and took a closer look at the canvas picture of a dark, candle-lit room, and in the shadows demonic faces peered out at her. It gave her unending creeps. Stunned, she turned to her husband and asked him about it. Mr. Duggan answered that he had seen it, but had never really paid much attention to it because they were still in the process of moving into the house when Patrick had disappeared. Mrs. Duggan lifted the picture frame off the wall to take a closer look, but it wasn't what was in front of the canvas, but behind it. There was a hole in the wall, a hole big enough for a boy of 8 years old to climb into. "Bill?" Mr. Duggan frowned at the hole in the wall. "A dumb waiter?" "A dumb what? Waiter? Who's the dumb waiter?" "No, it isn't a dumb waiter. It's one word, a dumb waiter. A lot of the big old houses used to have them, for transporting food or whatever, up and down through the house without ever having to use the stairs. Think of it as a little lift. They are still found in modern structures, offices, private buildings, stuff like that." He got out of bed and inspected the hole in the wall with his phone's flashlight, and froze. There, at the bottom of the shaft, was Patrick's crumpled body. And there was a second there, when he wanted to pretend that he hadn't seen anything, but he couldn't unsee it. Mr. Duggan turned to his wife, and with a heavy heart told her that their search was over. She cried into her hands and fell to the floor. She needed to see her son, but Mr. Duggan didn't want her to see Patrick like that, all twisted. And Mrs. Duggan knew her husband already regretted seeing what he had seen, so she acquiesced. They called the police, and a convoy of swirling blue lights descended upon the old orphanage in Fox Hollow. It was concluded that the painting had been put there to hide the dangerous dumbwaiter. And why hide the dumbwaiter? Because when they pulled out young Patrick Duggan, it was discovered that 5 fully intact skeletons at the bottom of that shaft had broken his fall and broken him in the process. Whatever had hung that oil painting of the occult over the death shaft had done so on purpose. It wasn't just some random painting. There was some sick and twisted sense to it all, but too many years had passed and tracking down the identity of the person was no longer an option. The voices stopped on the same morning the remains of the 5 skeletons, all boys, and Patrick were removed from the shaft. And even though their son would be forever part of the house, Mr. and Mrs. Duggan needed to get on with what was left of their lives, so resold the haunted old orphanage in Fox Hollow. Since then, it has been said that passers-by have heard strange voices and sounds coming from the empty orphanage on calm nights, especially a forlornly cry of a boy looking for his mommy and daddy.